Hey everyone, John here, and I'll say I had the honors of being invited by Ubisoft to try out their newly announced Heroes of Might and Magic 3 Remake. And I had a lot of fun, but before we get into it, I just want to let everybody know what you're going to see here is all work in progress, nothing's finished, and that the game is still in full development. And also another thing is that this franchise is completely new to me, so I want to kind of give the perspective as someone who doesn't really know this franchise, which this game is a remake of a game that's 25 years old, so it has a legacy. Now, Ubisoft and the development team really stress the importance of a few things, and I want to talk about that. First up is honoring the legacy. The original game is indeed 25 years old, and it was the third game in the series. So this franchise is even older, which goes back to the original Might and Magic series. The art, the gameplay feel, all this stuff was not too crazily different, and from what I could see from comparisons, it does a pretty good job. I especially think the environments really got a nice glow up, but they also want to honor all the fans of this game because this game is massively popular with a subsector of strategy fans, and they wanted to honor that through all the mods and creative work that has been put into the original game all these years. So they've been adding these quality of life features that modders did to the original game. One of them I really like is that with the press of the button, you can see all the enemy attack ranges in one go, which is helpful to make decisions during combat. And something else, they are going to make this game compatible to importing the old maps that were custom made for the original game into this game. And I think that's super awesome to do for the fans. Next big thing is modernization, which is visuals and modern features and just those typical quality of life we expect out of games of this day and age. So it's learning from the modern era of strategy games and such. And lastly, it's going to have a reach like never before as it's coming to consoles. Now, I don't know if it's coming to Switch too, but that mouse mode would be perfect for it. So I hope Ubisoft really puts effort to put this on the Switch too. Seems like a great fit for me, especially something on the go. Now with my hands-on with this, I first got to play the tutorial, which is a newly added thing. I only played the part 1 of a 3-part tutorial, and it very gently introduced me to all the mechanics, which is you start off with a hero character and they have stamina, and you can only move so much within that stamina before you need to rest up. Now, while you are looking around, you can collect resources, investigate structures, and attack enemy units. Each hero kind of represents an army, so while you don't see an army, they represent a bunch of units, and you can see them by clicking on your hero and just seeing who's underneath that hero at the time. This general gameplay loop is pretty engaging for all things considered, as I'm not the biggest turn-based strategy fan, but it felt like every decision was very free-forming. I didn't feel like I was limited into a small structural of decisions. I had plenty of options. And that's something I remember from strategy games of this era, is that you are given 1,000 ways to approach something. And I really appreciate that, and I think this gives it that unique twist. With my general experience with the game, I could tell I was playing a classic. When you just pick up a game and oh, this is a classic. It's hard to explain, but I'm sure we've all experienced that before. The graphics do have this early 2000s charm of games that I remember playing, like Age of Empires. It doesn't feel like a game that came out today, but it is polished like a game that came out today. The visuals and the features are definitely detailed. It's just, I feel like it's properly nostalgic. And it may not be as nostalgic as the original release. I think that one had some interesting and beautiful, handmade pixel art. But this one I have no qualms with. It has that fun fantasy medieval vibe that is kind of hokey and charming in ways. Now the combat is complex, but once again the tutorial really eased me into it. So you can have units that represent little tiny armies within your hero, and they'll be placed on one side of the battlefield, which the battlefield is a pretty large grid, but not too big. So you'll take turns maneuvering your characters or choosing to attack, Ranged characters can attack throughout the whole range of the map, but they do have a sweet spot zone where it does more damage, so you do want to move them around if you want to get that better damage. But melee characters have to get up close, and you really have to figure out spacing or else you end up being cornered by a bunch of enemies. And when you attack, it'll take out a number of units within the stack of enemies, but if the enemy is not killed within that attack, they will get a turn to retaliate. So you really have to think strategically on who's best served where, or else you will lose fast with bad decision making. It feels like a video gamey way of doing chess, and I really like it. But in the tutorial, I was never really pushed too hard to think strategically, except for maybe the last battle. But it did teach me a lot of important lessons, which would bring me into the next segment of the preview, which is the Scrimmage mode. This is where the cuffs come off with this game, as I was placed against 3 other AI in a very classic style strategy Scrimmage mode. This is where I was told the importance of the castles. The castle's where a lot of things happen. This is where you get your resources, your units, trades, and even other heroes to aid you in your conquest. I was told by the representative one of the key tips that they told me was to build something every turn. So after all your units are spent on their stamina and you made every decision, go back to the castle and choose something to upgrade before you go. You want to make sure you don't waste any unspent effort. I found those upgrades to be extremely useful during the combat to give me aid in buying more units that I needed, to get the resources to afford such units, and upgrade to get better and stronger units like the all-powerful angels. I love the angels. The maps here are interesting because you'll get like wild units that have no allegiance to the other AI that kind of defend key points. Like right off the get-go of the combat, I found an area right next to my castle that had a ton of gold, but it was guarded by sea serpent creatures, and I was just not at the level. The game even told me, it's like, this is deadly. Do not approach. But later in the round, when I really built up an army, I was able to go back there and just claim that gold back there, and it felt so satisfying to come back after building up a hero. And that's something else that's unique about it. There are RPG elements in the midst of this strategy. You'll be leveling up your heroes with all these unique stats, and I mean, there's so much stats in it. There's so much to keep track of within the castle, on the heroes. It's overwhelming. But when there's 1,000 ways to do things, that means the good old strategy of just having a large army can make up for not really knowing all these stats. And that's kind of what I did through most of my battle. I just got a lot of troops, and I was able to take out a bunch of enemies. And again, the value of castles showed up because you can capture other castles that are just out there guarded by units, and when you take it, it basically doubles your revenue and your resources. So there is a huge incentive to go out there as fast as you can to capture these castles. And by the way, I love the look of the castles in general, the UI. It's very immersive. You get to see like the town slowly build up. Has this beautiful big wide shot of the castle, and when you are first approaching the castle, it does a nice little cutscene. It's very just kind of cozy. Now I got attached to one of my heroes for leveling them up and getting them my preferable choice, and I also really adore that kind of like hero aspect, and it really gets you a personal attachment to these captains of your army. Now this was an hour-long session, but if you're a fan of old strategy games, you know a good battle can last hours, and I didn't get anywhere close to finishing the battle. Even if I did take out a few enemies, I still was not anywhere near done, but I wanted to keep playing, which was a good sign. I was there and got a warning for 5 minutes, but I really wanted to see this last battle and how it turned out, because I was getting kind of whooped. But it turned out my one single angel, which are kind of the top tier units you can get from my castle, one of them just wiped the entire army, which was such a satisfying finish for me. I can definitely see why this game has survived all these years and still feels fresh. I never quite played something like this before. Everything feels well thought out, and I am just barely even scratching the surface with this game. The game is slated for release next year, and I have it on my radar now, so I mean, hey, that's a good sign if it's put it on my radar. But hey, you in the comments, tell me if you ever played this series before, or if you're new to it, and if what I've said kind of gets you interested in it as well as it got me interested. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and have a good one. See ya!